Returning now to our political discussion, one day after fifth serial elections in Israel, Times of Israel journalist Carrie Keller-Lynn and diplomatic correspondent from the Israel-Hayom Daily, Ariel Kahana. Thank you both again for staying with us. Carrie, are you surprised by the voter turnout?
I'm not surprised given the amount of effort that politicians invested in it. It was very hard to predict what would happen, especially given the kind of Gewalt campaign that all parties almost turned to in the final days before elections. But voter turnout was the focus of this election cycle. It was the focus absolutely in the last 2 weeks leading up to it. It's where most parties put their effort, and obviously it paid in dividends. However, the turnout was so high that it benefited one bloc in particular, and that was ultimately the battle. It was voter turnout, but it was also whose voters would turn out. And I would also just like to call attention to the fact that this was particularly significant for Likud, which lost about 21% of its voters in the last cycle. So what we're seeing is that Likud was able to actually pull many of them back to the polls, excite them for the prospect of a stable right-wing government.
Well, many Israelis, whether they voted for the right-wing blocs or the left, are worried about the religious Zionism party's influence in the coming government. Ariel, do you think that Smotrich and Ben Gvir will get the ministries that they're asking for? These are top-level ministries. And how much will Israelis actually feel their influence in the day-to-day? Again, just to remind viewers, Smotrich is asking for the defense or the finance ministry, and Ben Gvir is asking for public security ministry.
So first of all, I would say, Ran, that many Israelis were worried from the current ministers or the living ministers of the living government, and that's the reason why National Zionism and Ben Gvir won with the Likud, of course, and the other religious parties, why they all won the elections. So each one is worried from the other side. But in any case, Ben Gvir yesterday actually gave some hint, yesterday night, that he's not so sure he will really ask for being the Minister for Internal Security. Look, Ben Gvir understands now that he is in Netanyahu's hands. Netanyahu, he is a main player now. He can try to look for supporters or people who will cross the line from the anti-Bibi's bloc, because it's very clear they lost, and therefore Ben Gvir is careful. He said, first of all, let's see if we can establish a right-wing government, and afterwards we'll talk about the ministries each one of us is going to take. And as well as senior Likud members are saying that they see at least a treasury ministry that has to be in the Likud hands, and as well as the defense. So in other words, I'm not sure that so easily Smotrich or Ben Gvir will get the ministries they want. It's just the beginning of the beginning. Let's see where it goes to.
Okay, in that same vein of questioning, Aryeh Deri from the Shas party, who spent 4 years in jail for corruption charges and who was again convicted of tax evasion last year, is expected to demand the Interior Ministry again and the Religious Affairs Ministry for his party. Do you think that he'll get them?
Well, I guess he will. Deri and Netanyahu, that's a different story. They are going on together for so many years. And Deri already was, as you mentioned, came back to the ministry for in the last years with Netanyahu. So I think there is no problem over that. But Netanyahu and Smotrich and Ben Gvir, that's a different game, because there is tension. As you may remember, during the elections, we could hear Smotrich talking not nicely against Netanyahu, saying he's a liar. So over there, it's a little bit different.
All right, Carrie, same question. What are your thoughts on Deri and Smotrich's and Ben Gvir's demands?
Again, I think Deri and Netanyahu's relationship is longstanding and premised on the idea that the Haredi parties ask for very small, concrete, narrow demands that tie directly to their base, such as religious affairs, internal ministry, and don't get involved in broader matters. This has worked well, and given that Shas had a banner night and is seen to get maybe 10 seats, I think it'd be very hard not to deliver them the ministries they ask for. In terms of the specific ministries that religious Zionism is demanding, I think the questioning goes beyond the ministries. There's several things in the party's platform that are quite aligned with what Likud wants, and that would be very wide-sweeping reforms. Top among them would be judicial reform. The judicial reform that Smotrich wants to push through is multi-pronged, but top among it would be allowing Knesset to have much more control over the Supreme Court by re-implementing laws that the Supreme Court would deem unconstitutional with a simple majority of Knesset MKs, as well as reshaping the appointments process, and also very much so neutering the role of the Attorney General by splitting it into two.
So, Carrie, I want to stay with you on this because you touched on this a little earlier. The Arab Balad and the left-wing Meretz parties are both nearing the threshold. They're just below it. And there are at least 500,000 double envelopes that still need to be counted, including, of course, the 2-3% of the regular votes that haven't yet come in. How might things change if one or both of those parties actually make it in?
It totally depends on how the numbers ultimately all shift. Everything kind of moves in constellation right now. I think it would be very hard at this point to dislodge the lead that was created by Netanyahu and his right religious allies. I think the question is what the next Knesset would look like and how the opposition would form itself.
Ariel?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Well, if you think that anything might change if Meretz or Balad or one or both of them made it in.
As far as I see, for the moment, no. And by the way, while we are speaking, Benny Gantz is announcing that he will go to the opposition together with Eisenkot and Gideon Sa'ar. That's the first party, as far as I know, that is declaring that. But we will have to wait and see what's going on in those parties, in Yesh Atid, in Machaneh HaMamlachti of Benny Gantz, because you do have over there more than few right-wing Knesset members. Their views is actually like the Likud views. For some reason, they found themselves on the other side, but it definitely might change, especially if we will see a right-wing stable government, as we discussed before. So then all those politicians will calculate once again where they want to find themselves in the coming years and in the coming future. So you definitely might see the factors going from the anti-Bibi bloc to Bibi's bloc.
All right. Carrie Keller-Lynn, Ariel Kahana, thank you both again so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, it's Emmanuel Kadosh. I wanted to invite you all to subscribe to ILTV+, where you can find our daily news and updates about Israel. And not only that, but live feeds, entertainment, our kosher food show, and so much more. Needless to say, your subscription to ILTV+ helps us grow and create more content while also supporting the state of Israel. Our app is available on all platforms and devices, so I'll see you guys there.